The river was calm that morning. Its surface reflected trees, sky, and the promise of a new beginning. The water moved slowly, quietly, as if nothing here had ever gone wrong. To anyone standing on its banks, the land looked generous. Forests stretched in every direction. Fish moved beneath the surface. Game passed through the trees, and yet inside the wooden walls of the settlement, people were already hungry. They did not know how hungry they would become. They did not know how long help would remain just out of reach. They only knew that food was running out faster than certainty. Years later, historians would struggle with a question, one that still unsettles those who study it carefully. How could a colony surrounded by land, water, and distant allies slowly starve to death, while help existed close enough to matter? In May of 167, 3 English ships entered the Chesapeake Bay and sailed inland along a wide river they would name the James in honor of their king. The settlers called their new home Jamestown. England was late to colonization. Spain had already taken gold. France had secured trade. England wanted something more permanent: land, power, profit, and proof that it belonged in the New World. The settlers who arrived were not farmers by design. Many were gentlemen, craftsmen, soldiers, or men sent to work off debt. They were sponsored by the Virginia Company, which promised returns on investment, not long-term stability. Jamestown was built quickly. A triangular fort rose from the marshy ground. It was defensible, close to deep water, and easy to supply by ship. It was also unhealthy. The water was brackish. Mosquitoes thrived. Disease followed. But survival came first. Early years were difficult. Disease spread. Food was scarce. Leadership collapsed more than once. Yet the colony endured, largely because of intermittent supply ships and uneasy trade with nearby Powhatan communities. By 168, Jamestown still existed. That fact alone created confidence. Survival became mistaken for stability. The settlers believed the worst had passed. England believed the colony was strong enough to expand. Plans were made not for reinforcement but for growth. Farming remained neglected. Too many men searched for profit instead of planting crops. Too many decisions were made with the expectation that ships would arrive before shortages became fatal. Food was controlled centrally, rations were issued, work was assigned, punishment was enforced, but preparation was inconsistent. Jamestown depended on the ocean. When ships arrived, the colony lived. When they did not, the colony weakened. This dependence was never corrected. In 169, England authorized a major relief fleet. Hundreds of settlers, supplies, new leadership. It was meant to stabilize Jamestown permanently. The fleet sailed into the Atlantic and encountered a hurricane. The flagship was wrecked. Other ships scattered. Some turned back. Some were delayed for months. Only fragments of the relief effort reached Virginia. Jamestown did not know this. They waited. As autumn approached, the colony was unprepared. Food stores were low. The population was higher than it had ever been. Relations with native communities had deteriorated after years of tension and violence. Trade slowed, then stopped. The settlers withdrew behind their fortifications. Isolation felt like safety. It became confinement. Winter arrived early. Temperatures dropped. Crops failed. Hunting became dangerous. Fishing slowed as the river changed. Rations were reduced. At first, hunger was uncomfortable. Then it became constant. People weakened. Illness spread. Death followed quietly at first, then regularly. Burials increased. Graves multiplied. Food ran out. The settlers ate horses, then dogs, then cats, then rats. Still, no ships came. By December, Jamestown was trapped by cold, hunger, and fear. Leaving the fort risked death. Staying inside guaranteed it would come eventually. This period would later be called the Starving Time. It lasted through the winter of 169 and into the spring of 106-10. It did not kill quickly. It killed patiently. Men who had crossed an ocean believing hardship would be temporary collapsed in their beds. Boys sent by families who could not feed them grew too weak to stand. Women cooked meals so thin they barely qualified as food. Hunger erased distinctions. Gentlemen and laborers suffered alike. Records from the period are sparse, but they tell enough. People died daily. By January, the settlement had changed. Silence replaced argument. Movement slowed. Work ceased. Survival became the only task, and still help did not arrive. This is the detail that troubles historians most. Jamestown was not completely isolated. English ships existed in the region. Information moved even if slowly. Native settlements still had food. Evacuation was possible, but no clear order was given. Authority was distant. Responsibility was divided. Decisions were delayed, so the colony remained. As winter deepened, desperation followed paths no one had planned for. Archaeological evidence later confirmed what written records only hinted at. In extreme cases, starvation crossed into acts previously considered unthinkable. This was not widespread. It was not spoken of openly. It was not a strategy, it was a consequence. By the time spring approached, Jamestown was nearly empty. Of the several hundred settlers present before winter, only about 60 survived. They were weakened, ill, silent. They were no longer maintaining a colony. They were waiting to die. When relief finally arrived in May of 1610, it came not with triumph but shock. The survivors were skeletal, buildings were collapsing, fields were abandoned, graves surrounded the fort. The rescuers did not find a settlement. They found a warning. The decision was made to abandon Jamestown entirely. The survivors boarded ships and began sailing down the river, leaving the ruins behind. Then as the ships moved away, another fleet appeared. New supplies, new leadership, new orders. Jamestown was reoccupied. The colony continued, but it did not forget. The starving time reshaped policy, leadership, and priorities. Farming became essential, authority tightened. Survival replaced optimism. Jamestown endured, but only after paying a cost rarely acknowledged in full. Hundreds died, not because land could not sustain them, but because decisions failed them. Food existed, help existed, time existed. What failed was action. The colony did not collapse in a single moment. It declined one delayed decision at a time. That is what makes it unsettling. Starvation was not sudden, it was observed. And by the time help arrived, it was too late to save most of the people who had been sent there to build a future. Jamestown survived history, many of its people did not, and the river kept flowing as if it had seen all of this before.